Good evening. Good evening. It is 5:19 p.m. evening time, Tuesday, December 23rd, 2025. Mark Kulak, KULACZ, Houstonic.live. Yeah, someone in the chat. By the way, I got a wonderful Christmas gift by this person in the chat. Scent-free cleaning products. You know you ain't a college kid anymore when you are excited to receive scent-free cleaning products. Thank you, Christy, for that. I received it, picked it up in my P.O. box. It was freaking awesome. Merry Christmas Eve. Yes. Hello, Howard. Hello, Katniss. Hello, Vindy. For those who are Candace Owens supporters, turn this one off right now. It's over for Candace Owens. Unfortunately, because the mess that she is involved in is not about Candace Owens. I mean, maybe she was the right person to do the particular job, but the defense of Candace Owens right now, you're going to see it loosely connected with a desire to take down the United States of America. And I know there's a lot of people waving flags and shoving flags everywhere and saying that they're patriots and they're doing it for America, but as you're going to see, maybe not just tonight, but over the next few days or weeks, the defense of Candace Owens right now is without doubt associated with a desire to harm the United States of America. And it's not because of Candace Owens, it's because the machine that is behind Candace Owens and that Candace Owens worked for, that Candace Owens been recruited by. And if Candace Owens were to not be able to do her job anymore, which I don't wish any harm on her or anyone, someone else will fill the role of Candace Owens, because it's not about Candace Owens the person, it's about this abstraction of her. And for the first time ever, I think I can start to really see the Jeffrey Epstein story clearly for what it is right now. Remember my background. How did I get involved in this? I got involved in this because I was wondering why drug addiction and fatal drug overdoses in the United States of America weren't getting more visibility during the 2000 teens. We had a couple of situations which involved addiction in the family. I became aware of how serious it could be because of my own several months prescription to oxycodone, And as the fatal drug overdose numbers annually went from 18,500 in the year 1998, 1999, they were well in the 50,000 range in the years, the 2000 teens, and they just kept going up and up. They stopped going up a little bit during the 4 years of Trump's presidency, except for the last year in which they exploded, and then they exploded further to 110, 120,000 during those years, which is just crazy. Why is it that in the year 2021, we had as many drug overdoses, fatal drug overdoses, as 1995, 1996, 1997, 1998, 1999, and 2000 combined? And then we did it again the following year, and nobody talked about it because they were afraid of germs and gain-of-function viruses and spiky, sharp proteins floating around. And so that's what got me involved in this. So the thing with a fatal drug overdose is that a fatal drug overdose is fatal. A victim of a fatal drug overdose is dead. They're dead. They will never vote again. They will never have more kids. They will never be able to care for their parents or care for their own kids. They're dead. They're gone. If you want to manipulate an election, you know how you control an election? You know, blackmail is one thing, I guess, but if people are dead, they can never vote anymore. They're gone. They're gone. And as we've had during this opioid epidemic, 1 million drug overdose deaths over these last, 15, 16 years from the fentanyl. And it's really not cocaine. It's not that. It's the fentanyl. And it's all the addiction which comes from needless prescriptions of things which are way more addictive than many people know that they are getting. Of course, it's family breakdown and cultural issues that also play a big part of it. Maybe excessive use of electronics, diet, And I think that a well over-vaccinated and immunologically and sometimes even neurologically damaged population from excessive intramuscular injections also creates a population which is more likely to become addicted and seek drugs when they become of age. That's another thing that people don't talk about. The propensity of someone to want to seek more drugs goes up. Let's not overlook the fact that we've also had a significant loosening of restrictions on access to marijuana, which, again, I'm not against, but let's be totally honest. As the United States has made marijuana more legal, more people have become addicted, and a dramatic increase in deaths have occurred. My stepson's addiction started with a joint. It started with marijuana. It didn't start off with Xanax. In his case, in many cases, addictions start off with pain medicine because of an injury, because of a root canal. It started off with a joint. And because of his nature, that one joint that he tried led to him pounding 60, 80 pills, whatever he could get his hands on. That opened the door. So how about this? How about at least admitting the fact that the two are loosely correlated and figure out a way to avoid it? Instead, that's a discussion nobody wants to have, because this future of transfection and burying, transfection therapies within genetically modified cannabis is a huge part of the future right now. That's happening. It's going to happen. That's what they've been looking at, and that's one of the reasons why you have people who are human genome experts who are also cannabis experts. It's not because they need tax revenue. It's not because they just want to be cool. It's because they foresee a future of medical cannabis which is going to be used for transfection purposes. Anyways, coming out of that rabbit hole a little bit, I bring this up because I see all these crybabies like shove a veil or choke on a veil or, eat a veil, lift a veil, smash a veil. This stupid idiot saying there's 1,000 people, 1,000 Epstein survivors. Like, you know what an Epstein survivor is? An Epstein survivor is someone who is not dead. Not dead. A survivor, not dead. Have we had 1 million people killed by Epstein? I don't think so. We have 1,000, up to 1,000 survivors. Do you know how many hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people have to get involved with prostitution because of addiction? And then oftentimes still die in the end? Millions! And a lot of them die. Still on the way. Epstein, we talk about survivors. And many of these Epstein survivors have net worths that are higher than the average income. Let's be honest, many of them were call girls. I'm not saying that they don't have decisions that they regret. I'm not saying that they weren't offered drugs, maybe had to deal with addiction themselves. I'm not saying that there aren't some tragedies buried in there. But if you are not making the most important thing all the time, then you have your priorities out of whack and you will never solve it. The biggest problems are enabled by encouraging people to chase down and focus on less important problems. You had several 100,000, at a minimum, people murdered during COVID-19 with hospital protocols, but there are Epstein survivors because of things that Epstein did 20 years ago. How could focusing on Epstein survivors from incidents 20, 30 years ago possibly be more important than several 100,000 or 1 million murders with hospital protocols and clearly lethally laced, intentionally lethally laced drugs which are allowed to circulate within the United States of America? There is no way anyone could possibly make any statement to me and win. I will crush everyone on any competition regarding putting Epstein as the most important thing. However, since we are told to focus on Epstein, I titled this show, Candace Owens is going to help us understand the real nature of Jeffrey Epstein. Candace Owens is. And the more Candace Owens gets boosted, and the more we're told to protect Candace Owens, the more the traitors are going to become visible. The traitors and the people who are, maybe it's not their idea to defend Candace Owens, but they've taken jobs as podcasters and influencers and meddlers and whatever the hell else you want to call them to protect Candace Owens for the bigger machine. Jeffrey Epstein, the story which has been circulating a lot in the New York Times and elsewhere right now, is how there is connections. There's flight logs shared between Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein from, at the very least, the early 2000s. I don't subscribe to this idea that there's rooms full of kids being decapitated and eaten, and there's millions of women who are being kidnapped, and that somehow they've been able to successfully blackmail thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people around the world without one person saying, I don't care what kind of evidence you have on me, I'm just going to talk anyways. The narrative falls flat. If you just say what people want you to believe about Jeffrey Epstein, you don't even need to have evidence. Otherwise, if I were to say that I have the ability to snap my fingers and go to the moon and come back so fast that you wouldn't be able to pick it up on camera, you don't have a responsibility to say, I think Mark Kulak is lying. You say, he's full of shit. So, similarly, this idea that you can control the world, all companies, all patents, all technologies, all governments, all state level, all federal level, all military contractors, all religions, and all churches through blackmail by flying people to islands and then doing weird sexual things with them and then giving them baby caviar or whatever the hell else they're claiming. It is actually even more obscene to claim you have a technology where you can snap your fingers and go to the moon and come back so fast that nobody can see you. It is so ludicrous. You don't even need to disprove it. It is so stupid. Just say it, what they want you to believe about this guy. I'm not saying he's a great guy or a bad guy. I don't know. I don't need to know. What I do know is that the claims that are being made are so preposterous, are so impossible, that I don't even need to disprove them. But I do know that the media wants me focused on a mainstream and alt media and a whole bunch of politicians. So everything that pops up near Jeffrey Epstein, if you ever went to a diner with him, if you ever shook hands with him, if you were ever on a boat with him, if you shared a plane with him, if you're in a photo with him, if he photobombed your photo, it should just be assumed that you eat babies and do horrible things with women, and that you're CIA and Mossad and you're part of some Masonic pyramid Venetian cult that is all about ruling people and raping people and eating people. That's what you're supposed to believe. It is so preposterous. It's so absurd. Now, Bill Clinton is in a hot tub. Holy shit. He was in a hot tub. Oh, my goodness. He was in a hot tub. This is disgusting. Why is it disgusting? He's in a hot tub. A lot of people have been in hot tubs, you know. A lot of people will go in hot tubs tonight. People will go into hot tubs tomorrow. Why? Because Epstein's in the area? That makes it disgusting. It's a photo. Anyways, Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein, how are they connected? People are pissed because as these things are rolling out, they're making these claims of, just because this guy is with Epstein, that doesn't mean, and that doesn't mean that. And if Trump was with him, well, that means that, and that means this, and whatever. What I'm trying to highlight, though, is that as this is coming out, there's a lot of focus regarding these flights that were done using Jeffrey Epstein's airplane. And they're talking a lot about one very particular trip here. How did Mr. Epstein and Mr. Clinton know each other? He was a president. He got to meet all kinds of people. He must have shaken hands with at least, at a minimum, 1 to 2 million people. There are so many people that have shaken Bill Clinton's hand, like at a rally or an event or a restaurant or something like that. He doesn't know all these people. He knows a lot of people. He's met a lot of people. He was president. He should meet a lot of people. How did Mr. Epstein and Mr. Clinton know each other? Well, Mr. Epstein, of course, should know Mr. Clinton because Mr. Clinton was president of the United States of America. Anyways, during his career in finance, both at Bear Stearns and when he struck out on his own, Mr. Epstein had a reputation for being intensely private. Oh my goodness. I'm private, you know. I wanted to spend my day in sweatpants. Oh, my goodness. I'm intensely private. Oh, my goodness. But in 2002, the former president took a trip on Mr. Epstein's private jet. A lot of people own private jets, which brought a flurry of media attention. At the time, Mr. Clinton had been out of the White House for 2 years and had started the nonprofit group, the Clinton Foundation. Through his work with the foundation, Mr. Clinton connected with Mr. Epstein. Whatever that means, I don't know. The ride on the private jet was part of a visit to Africa that Mr. Clinton made in order to discuss economic development on the continent and the ongoing fight against HIV and AIDS. Things which, of course, HIV and AIDS, well, now we're talking Robert Malone and Judy Mikovits's ballgame. But let's not get there just yet. Jeffrey is both a highly successful financier and committed philanthropist with a keen sense of global markets and an in-depth knowledge of 21st century science, said Mr. Bill Clinton. Through a spokesman, he told New York Magazine in 2002, and I can show you that article. Went on to say, I especially appreciated his insights and generosity during the recent trip to Africa to work on democratization, empowering the poor, citizen service, and combating HIV and AIDS. Mr. Epstein did not speak with New York Magazine, but friends who were interviewed said that Mr. Epstein viewed his relationship with Mr. Clinton as an extension of his general networking philosophy. He says, I invest in people, be in science or politics, blah, 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 blah. Was that the only trip? And they talk about a few other trips. The one that has attracted a lot of attention is one that had Kevin Spacey on it. It had Jeffrey Tucker, the black comedian Jeffrey Tucker on there, and it had a few other people. Now, there's a name that is on that list that I've asked several people about who also do podcasts and repeat this stuff. And they're all like, yeah, I don't really know that name. And then they move on. And I think it's because they received the memo. Don't talk about that name. Ignore that name and run away from the name. Oh my goodness, I thought we should all be attracted like flies to shit or moths to lamplights when it comes to names on Epstein lists. Again, I think most of this stuff is nonsense. I think it's an operation to dirty people up, and also there's a money laundering operation to it, which, again, if you're a wealthy Democrat donor, you hire Jeffrey Epstein, and Jeffrey Epstein will make you money. How does he make you money? Well, if you're an intelligence agent, people can easily tell you about this planned 2001 biological terror attack that's going to happen in New York City and how there's going to be a huge boom for DNA vaccines. And you should invest in nuclear energy because in the long run, there's going to be a big demand for small nuclear reactors 10, 20, 30 years after they build the computers and start collecting enough data to reverse engineer the human genome. And you know what? If you're Jeffrey Epstein, you get a little bit of this information about the future, which is going to happen, and you can't lose. Any person of any IQ, of any capabilities, can make money in the stock market if they're told how the human genome, genetic vaccines, small form nuclear reactors, and computing, and the internet is going to play out over the next 30 years. Anybody can make money. You don't need to have some special whiz kid algorithm to figure this out. Anybody can make money on this. So Jeffrey Epstein helps the donors make the money because he already knows where the money is going to be made. And then because they make more money, because they're effectively working with inside trader information, they have a little bit more money to donate to their favorite political candidates. And although everyone loves to talk about Wexner, the reality is that the candidates that Jeffrey Epstein mostly supported were Democrats. And the other part about Les Wexner's the biggest candidate that he supported was D'Amato, the senator in New York State. And who did he lose to? Who did Senator D'Amato lose to in 1999 in New York State before 9/11? Chuck Schumer. The Ukrainian. That's right, Chuck Schumer, the Ukrainian. became senator in 1999. And then not long after that, Hillary Clinton joined them to perform the perfect Democrat-controlled senator wall that you needed around the biological terror attack in New York City that was being planned for the fall of 2001. Hello? But it gets better. The name that people don't want to talk about is Ira Magaziner. And I'm going to make Magaziner famous. Ira Magaziner was famous in the 1990s. The Hillary Clinton health care plan. This plan to put all Americans on national health care, to centralize medical records, to make databases of genomes and everything else, was spearheaded by this guy, Ira Magaziner. And Magaziner was the other name that was on the flight with Kevin Spacey, with Bill Clinton, with Jeffrey Tucker. And there's a multitude of communications that also fall within there. So Ira Magaziner is a friend of Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton's, for that matter, going all the way back to college. Ira Magaziner is from Rhode Island. He is one of the most powerful people in Rhode Island. His son Seth right now is a United States congressperson in Rhode Island, and in fact is currently one of the biggest nemesis of Kristi Noem, the head of the Department of Homeland Security under President Trump. So they are part of the machine. But there's other people that Seth Magaziner have worked with extensively, including John Podesta, for example, but in the state of Rhode Island, including one of the previous top 5 DNC fundraising individuals, and that is a man named Mark Weiner of Rhode Island, who is also a friend of Hillary Clinton going back to the 1970s, and Mark Weiner passed in 2016. But the detail there is that Mark Weiner's daughter is the person that Candace Owens starts her company, Social Autopsy, with. Matter of fact, the person who handled scheduling for President Carter was Mark Weiner. Mark Weiner was living in the White House, handling scheduling for President Carter in the 1970s after helping Carter win the presidency for DNC operations with Hillary Clinton going back to the 1970s. And then all the merchandise that was manufactured and sold for the DNC for the next 30 years, Financial Innovations Incorporated in Rhode Island, was handled by Mark Weiner, whose daughter's the person that Candace Owens starts her company with in 2015. First, it's Degree 180 and then Social Autopsy. But it gets better, because that means that Candace Owens is also starting a company with someone that spent so much time in the White House, she felt like it was her second home. But it gets better, because Candace Owens twice, not once, twice, made claims of being a victim of a race-based hate crime in high school before she even graduated and had the opportunity to come into contact with Jesse Jackson, in her own words, in a Stefan Molyneux interview in 2017. Stefan Molyneux, of course, a great big man who loves for Steve Bannon, if you know what I mean. Anyways, Candace Owens then goes on with this company. What you need to know is Jesse Jackson is also such a close friend with Mark Weiner of Rhode Island that Jesse Jackson made Mark Weiner godfather to Jesse Jackson's own children. And it's not just a one-time thing. One of Jesse Jackson's own kids was one of the pallbearers at Mark Weiner's funeral. But it gets better. This relationship between Ira Magaziner, it makes sense because Ira Magaziner becomes a director of one of the Clinton Global Initiative or Clinton Health Initiative or HIV Initiative within the Clinton organization for the next 20-something years. So it would not be unreasonable for Candace Owens to have gone on a few dinner dates with Zoe Weiner during 2015 and met Hillary Clinton. In fact, it would actually be absurd to even speculate on the possibility that Candace Owens didn't have several dinners with Hillary Clinton during 2015 and early 2016. I'm not saying that they went well, but it would be ridiculous to think that they didn't. The money was already there. They didn't really need to do the Kickstarter. I have pictures of Zoe Weiner staying at hotels in New York City that were $1,000 a night. They didn't need the money. The money was done for appearance. The money was done for media attention. The money was done to have a webpage that could be shared. It really wasn't necessarily about grifting. So now you have to wonder, between Magaziner and Mark Weiner, how many times were they on the on the yacht? Because the yacht was docked in Rhode Island. How much of the DNC Clinton power goes to Rhode Island? You know the answer? A lot. It's underestimated. Rhode Island is a very small state. It's only 1 million people. It is a very easy state to control and get 2 Senate seats. You have tons of shoreline. There's a lot of ocean front in Rhode Island, given the population. A lot of the population is actually quite destitute. I had to deal with the police in Woonsocket, for example. But how many times was Mark Weiner on the yacht? How many did Zoe Weiner herself go on the yacht when she was younger? It would be ridiculous to think that she wasn't. And this isn't a stretch to say, oh, okay, so between Mark Weiner and Magaziner and Hillary Clinton, you have the Jeffrey Epstein connections over here with the person that Candace Owens starts the company with. It would be reasonable for someone to say, Mark, I have some doubt about that, okay? That's not really hard proof of anything. All right, that's fair. That's fair. But it's on the other side as well, because Candace Owens is not a conservative. She says she is. She's a newfound conservative. But no, Candace Owens, if you look at the order of the shows that she was on, her run-ins with Miley Yiannopoulos, Gamergate, Stefan Molyneux, Rubin Report, blah, 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 and then eventually winding up on the Joe Rogan podcast, which I think there is a nugget in the Joe Rogan podcast from early 2018. I want you to consider this. There is a nugget in the Joe Rogan podcast where Joe Rogan on May 2018 said, when talking with Candace Owens, he never heard of Charlie Kirk. And he never heard of Turning Point. He was like, Charlie Kirk? Who is that? What a fascinating name. Tell me, Candace Owens. And Candace Owens says, that she is one of the vice presidents there, and it's a company that also has Charlie Kirk. In other words, Candace Owens, her opportunity to get into Turning Point was about making her the face of Turning Point and taking it back. There are so few successful right-leaning political organizations in the United States of America that even just 2 or 3 people, and Charlie Kirk, who goes to college campuses every once in a while and gets 20 people, is actually considered to be an intolerable threat. Such a threat that you need to recruit Candace Owens to take it over. And then after they kick Candace Owens out, now you need to hire other, lying bastards to run around and suggest that Turning Point USA is the focus of money laundering and corruption in Ukrainians and Pakistanis and Jews and Israelis, and you need to shred the company. You need to shred Turning Point USA. The more I look at Turning Point USA, it's one of the only organizations that offered any reasonable, somewhat, sometimes anyways, viewpoints without constantly focusing on pedophilia and space aliens. Turning Point USA was the only organization where anybody, Charlie Kirk, matter of fact, actually made a statement a few months before he was assassinated and taken off the stage that the United States should avoid getting involved in the India-Pakistan war. No wonder why people are getting paid to want to shred Turning Point USA. Because it's about protecting Candace Owens. It ain't about protecting Candace Owens or about the United States of America. It's about removing the only organization in the United States that, as failed as it may be, provides any useful, sometimes maybe, opposition to the bullshit that you see on mainstream media. As a matter of fact, the more I'm looking at Turning Point, the more I'm thinking of maybe throwing them a couple of shillings. You know what they're doing right now? They're starting to lean in and thinking of supporting J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance, that South Park wants to shred every week as being involved in some sex relationship with Trump and Satan. No useful conversation about J.D. Vance at all. They just hate him. He's small. He looks funny. He talks funny. They hate him. And I'm not a big J.D. Vance guy, but when I see so many people have such vitriol, unrelenting hatred for someone, well, generally speaking, when everybody hates somebody so much, I'm like, I'm gonna keep my mind open. Anyways, Candace Owens is making all of this visible right now. Candace Owens lands a conversation on the U.S.-Mexican border in August 4th of 2019, 4 days before Jeffrey Epstein dies. So Candace Owens has the last interview in the world with the guy who had the last interview with Jeffrey Epstein before that guy died. And Candace Owens can't get any information about Jeffrey Epstein? And if you want to look at the Rhode Island connections, it doesn't end there. Let's not forget about Harvey Weinstein. Candace Owens gets the only Harvey Weinstein interview in like 8 or 9 years. Why? Harvey Weinstein said in one of those interviews, Candace, we've known each other for so long. That means that goes back, Candace Owens, they made a mistake there. That goes back probably to 2013, 14, or 15. Probably Degree 180 or earlier. That would make sense because Candace Owens starts his company with Zoe Weiner, who is, growing up in the White House. Going shopping at Costco with Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton and her longtime connections with Jeffrey Epstein, of course, and Harvey Weinstein. Harvey Weinstein, going all the way back to 2006, a business partner well-established of Steve Bannon. And, of course, they control the 9/11 narrative together. Michael Moore, his company, it gets their money from Harvey Weinstein. Michael Moore makes a movie that the Twin Towers collapsed because the Bush family wanted to make some money off insurance, and someone shorted the stock market, and white people suck, and Muslims, well, they're reasonable people who are just upset that Americans are having so much fun with their freedom, and that's why the towers collapsed, because Bush let the planes be hijacked. And then you got the Bannon side, faces of evil, where the Muslims are the bad people. You can never repair them because they just wake up in the morning and hate Americans and hate freedom, and they couldn't be stopped, and that's why the buildings collapse. Total spectrum control between Steve Bannon and Harvey Weinstein in the 9/11 narrative going back to 2004, thanks to Steve Bannon and Michael Moore. And what was Candace trying to, how would you say, extract from Harvey Weinstein in the interviews? Harvey Weinstein was saying, well, I made some mistakes, but, oh, my goodness, it's really those Jews. It's those Jews. Oh, the Jews. Harvey Weinstein was going to provide Candace Owens some evidence that it was going to be the Jews in Israel and Saudi Arabia, behind 9/11. Now, you can learn a lot about this if you consider the fact of where Jeffrey Epstein is and where he's getting promoted in which magazines and the 9/11 timeline. Chuck Schumer is a dirty, dirty little dog. Not a very good person for the United States of America, and he is paired up side by side with Hillary Clinton when those terrorist hijacked planes flew into the towers, and then the towers, instead of just, melting because there was so much jet fuel, they exploded, just as if there was going to be a suitcase nuke or something in them. A narrative that was predicted in Harvey Weinstein's very own magazine called Talk, which predicted a suitcase nuke. It even gave in part numbers. And even interviewed Tucker Carlson. And it talked all about how the buildings could blow up if there's a suitcase nuke on them. Harvey Weinstein not only is controlling 9/11 narrative afterwards, but was even controlling the 9/11 narrative, Bio 911, before it happened. Scott Ritter even popped up in these magazines. It is no reason for that. Chelsea Clinton's exclusive interview after 9/11, talking about how she saw the planes fly into the buildings and she was jogging around them. Of course, that's Harvey Weinstein controlling that narrative. But anyways, the point here is Candace Owens has all this access to the Jeffrey Epstein narrative on the Steve Bannon side. She's going to get breadcrumb to it on the Harvey Weinstein, but also the business partner side. Because I just know, because so much is redacted, I just know, maybe not between Jesse Jackson, but definitely between the rest of the political machine, everything from Hillary Clinton to Magaziner to Mark Weiner to other powers within Rhode Island, you're going to get a connection, or you're going to get something related to the support for social autopsy, for Degree 180, and then ultimately a reference for Candace Owens having done good enough after several attempts, after several trials, to be able to be this this person who is going to be used to get into Turning Point USA and destroy it. That's exactly what she was hired to do, to become the new face of Turning Point USA, to make it about Blexit. And then she goes on to fight against the governor of Virginia because he is woke? Really? Look, I'm not a big fan of the constant focus on gender identity. But again, if you look at deaths and if you look at the size of this drug epidemic, how can someone say that with all of these deaths happening right now with drug overdoses, with no awareness to it, that somehow has to constantly take a back seat to gender identity discussions? Gender identity discussions should be high on the list, but number one all the time, no questions, can't talk about anything else. That's what Candace Owens is instructed, not her idea, instructed to do. It's always about, well, that person lost because they just put too much attention on gender identity. And that was her big line against Terry McAuliffe, the governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia that called a national emergency, or state emergency anyways, during the Charlottesville event. The governor of Virginia, Terry McAuliffe, who is also a friend of Ira Magaziner and Mark Weiner, going all the way back to at the very least, the 1990s, but probably even before then. Terry McAuliffe didn't just wind up accidentally in Virginia like that, with that particular role. Now, let us look at another angle, another weird angle of the saga of Candace Owens and Rhode Island and Charlottesville. What are the odds? What are the stinking odds that in Charlottesville is the home of not only David Martin, Mr. Intellectual Property Baldness David Martin, but who wrote a paper on that? I can't even remember that drug that was causing the thalidomide. But also, before he bought his horse ranch, Robert Malone. Robert Malone and David Martin didn't really live that far apart, just south of Charlottesville before those events in, spray painting statues and stuff in the Unite the Right rally. That's odd, because who lands a 4-hour interview with Robert Malone right after Joe Rogan? Who lands it? Of course, it's Candace Owens. Who is the person that drives, Lee Mang-Yen all around the country, going to Catholic churches? The same Lee Mang-Yen that supposedly was saved by Steve Bannon, the same Steve Bannon that's supporting Candace Owens. Oh, that's right, it's Robert Malone. And then Robert Malone, let's not forget, he's a vice president or the head of technology at a company in Rhode Island, Epivax, that is responsible for using Microsoft tools to break down viruses and genetic sequences and looking for background signals so that they can, make genetic vaccines on the fly. A technology that they all the companies basically use for COVID, but no one wants to talk about it. A company which also received, through state and federal funding up in Rhode Island, money that came from the political machine of Rhode Island, including Ira Magaziner. And remember, the person who founded that company, what was her name? I can't think of her name right now. She is a student of one of Robert Malone's mentors, Jay Berzofsky, who bought the house that used to be owned by Hugh Auchincloss, the deputy director of the NIAID, and a family that's married into the Kennedys. All of this is available. But no, The Candace Owens defenders, they are going to say, well, Erica's Epstein. Her dad worked for a defense company. They just ignore all of that rest of that stuff. Just ignore it. No. The Jeffrey Epstein saga, to me, starts to make sense because now I'm thinking it in terms of both Jeffrey Epstein can offer his services to someone like a Les Wexner, who is going to provide money to Republican candidates. And then every month, something's happening to Les Wexner. Guns are showing up in the planes. Cocaine is popping up. There's accusations of trafficking. Everything bad just keeps happening to this guy who's trying to support the Republican candidate. Well, isn't that odd? That all of the bad stuff happens because, you would think that Jeffrey Epstein, if he's really all about the money, and by the way, he really wasn't worth that much money. That's what's odd. He was worth $600 million. $600 million is a lot of money. I wouldn't mind being worth $600 million, but $600 million doesn't even put you on the top 1,000 wealthiest Americans. There are Americans who make more in a month than he's worth after everything he's done. So in other words, he's really not as rich. He is very rich by everyday standards. By pedestrian standards, Jeffrey Epstein is very rich. But by real standards, by as far as the top 100 or 1,000 Americans, he really isn't that rich. He is enough to make people go, oh, he's got an island. His island was worth $80 million. There are houses in Los Angeles selling for $300 million. In other words, it's not a super valuable island. Isn't that crazy to really think about it that way? It's just enough to be able to seed all of these crazy, wacky narratives that people could shoot down, but they don't. They want them fueled. So it is about the fact that you can provide your services to wealthy Democrats, and then because you already have information about the Human Genome Project, you know it's going to be which biotech companies to invest in. You know which security companies to invest in. You know which energy companies to invest in. You know which computing companies to invest in. And you can win all the time. You're playing with loaded dice. Of course he's successful. So he can help the people that they need to help get the money that they need, because this is the new era of money laundering. This is the new era of supporting political candidates. He probably got a little bit of training from Kirk Kerkorian out in Nevada, because they went from the small casinos, which worked with the mafia and then had kickbacks to the Democrat Party, and then they had the corporate casinos, which is Kirk Kerkorian's idea, Harry Reid. Kirk Kerkorian's idea out in Nevada, which increased the kickbacks to the Democrat Party, but started to de-emphasize money going to the mafia. Now, you just have a smart investor, with private equity, provide their services to the wealthy people, help them make more money than they would have otherwise, also make sure that the money's going to the companies that are going to need it to keep their valuations going up. Everybody wins, at least everybody that they want to win is going to win. And then if there's a troublesome Republican, a troublesome person that, kind of likes American flags and shit, what you do is, that's the person that has the cocaine wind up on the plane. Les Wexner is probably was the easiest thing ever. The guy owns a lingerie company. Think of the possibilities of awful narratives that you could paint with that. And there it is. And after 9/11, before 9/11, they knew Trump was weird. Trump was an odd one because Trump did have enough financial resources that he wasn't really like the rest. And Trump was also a playboy. Everyone knows it. I've heard horrible things. It's funny that the worst things I've heard Trump say in his days where he was dating, he just said some terrible things about women and sleeping around and multiple women, and none of that stuff ever seems to go viral. I don't know why. It's very distasteful. I don't like listening to it, but it's all out there. No one wants to share that. He didn't need this guy. He didn't need Epstein. But they knew after 9/11 they had a little bit of a weird problem. So his lean was much harder in the Trump direction after 9/11. First of all, not only 9/11 did not go according to the plan, they didn't have the large-scale biological terror attack. The investors didn't make the money that they thought they were going to make. But now you can see these papers are really starting to super emphasize this. And also the relationship with Bill Clinton. People go, well, Bill Clinton was president and he's a Democrat. The healthcare policy that was being designed, for personalized medicine, for public records, opening up the internet, who oversaw all of the government legislation and the proposals for opening up the internet and for e-commerce? It was Ira Magaziner, a name that no one likes to talk about, not sexy enough, I guess, who was working behind the scenes with Hillary Clinton, not Bill Clinton, regarding the major changes required to the healthcare of the United States of America long term, which was going to facilitate this new era of genomics, of getting in control of evolution of the human species, data collection from the general population. It was Ira Magaziner. And a lot of people, one of the biggest complaints about the Clinton administration was how all of these radical changes that were being suggested to healthcare were being done behind the scenes. They were being done beyond closed doors. So there was the Clinton White House, which was kind of a very moderate White House. It wasn't super liberal. It wasn't super conservative. It was just kind of blah. The radical stuff was done behind the scenes, and Hillary Clinton was overseeing that. Magaziner, Podesta, etc. That's the stuff that and those policies they were not successful. There was way too much controversy happening elsewhere, and then between that and 9/11, it just it didn't come into fruition. But they didn't stop working on it. There's a reason why Magaziner went on to head the Clinton Global Health Initiative for another 20 years, and it certainly wasn't his looks. All of this stuff we can get visibility to. Now we can start focusing on it thanks to Candace Owens. Candace Owens is the breakout. Candace Owens is providing the excuse. Candace Owens not only is going to help us see how individuals who want to maybe get some recognition, make careers doing this stuff, can get hired and can get used and get told what to say. She not only can be one of the ways that we are going to break the whole illusion of rule by podcast, but the people behind Candace Owens, Harvey Weinstein, I think you're going to find Hillary Clinton not too far behind her as well, McAuliffe, the Rhode Island political machine, Jesse Jackson, Steve Bannon, etc., and several routes where you're one or two hops away from Jeffrey Epstein. I think Candace Owens is going to be a big part of breaking this illusion. And the other part is the Turning Point USA thing. Again, I've been very public about my frustrations about J.D. Vance talking about the drug epidemic when he was running as vice president. Not so much since then, taking time to go to India. But now it makes sense because J.D. Vance is possibly one of the only people in politics who could put up a reasonable, how would you say, could reasonably have distance from India control and infiltration in the United States of America. He's married to this beautiful woman who was Indian. And she was born in the United States. Clearly. I see a lot of attempts right now to connect her with other less trustworthy Indian nationals. And I don't think it's going to pan out. Because this is about India. That is why Charlie Kirk was told to come off the stage. That Charlie Kirk was going to be killed for real, or they were going to do something else. That is why Erica Kirk, when she goes to Washington, D.C., another Candace Owens mistake, the one thing that she goes to Washington, D.C. for was a swearing-in ceremony of the new ambassador to India. And as I've said before, India was way more involved in 9/11 than most people want to say. Chuck Schumer is a massive, massive supporter of relations with India and outsourcing to India. Massive. He's also the person that in the year 2000, thanks to Wall Street connections, was able to shepherd a few $1 million up to Rochester right into the hands of the mother-in-law of Sasha Latipova. That's right. The Ukrainian, Chuck Schumer, just became senator, brings Wall Street money up to Rochester for the Ukrainian family of Sasha Latipova for their startup. The same family whose daughter Soph gets hired into the intellectual dark web idiots, doing all kinds of nasty videos, and even threatens to murder the family of the YouTube CEO in 2019, which puts her on the head of InfoWars and Alex Jones and so on. Alex Jones also loves Candace Owens. 5 interviews in 2005. In 2017, InfoWars. But also, going back to the Soph story, isn't that just a peach of a story? How all of those things just tie together. The same Sasha Latipova touring the world with Robert Malone, the same Robert Malone that does his 4-hour show with Candace Owens. Can't you see it? It all makes sense now. It's all an operation. And it's not really about Israel. Not really. Israel will be fine. They'll be fine on their own. They have plenty of allies. In India in particular, India is Israel's future. But now you can see it. And now all of this is available. Thank you to Candace Owens. Every day Candace Owens is on the stage. Every day gives us one more day to highlight how people are using Candace Owens to wreck the United States of America. Every day Candace Owens is on the stage is a gift. I wouldn't know what to do tomorrow if Candace Owens quit. I would be lost for a little while because it's so much free material. It's great big light up LED signs with arrows saying, look here and look there and look there. It's wonderful. Candace Owens is my Christmas present. Thank you. All right. That's it, guys. Thank you much. 1 hour, 31 minutes. 1 hour, 31 seconds. Take care. Again, episode 1433 or 1434. I don't know. Tuesday, December 23rd, 2025. Take care. God bless.